Is that your Muslim name?
I don't. That is a Muslim name.
Yeah,
it's a prophet of Islam, John.
Yahya,
yeah.
So is that what you
well,
go
in
by,
fact,
John?
John is Hanan, right, in Hebrew.
Jonathan.
Yohanan, yeah. So we believe Yahya is the name that was given to Hanan.
Okay.
And it's described in the Quran as well. So, but we're not required to change it to Arabic, and most of the prophets in the Quran are not Arabic names,
I think that's
Hebrew names, right?
That's good to hear. So in Judaism, we'll get the politics. They're just
carry on.
If I'm in synagogue and I'm called up to do a religious service, or I have a marriage certificate, it goes by my Hebrew name, which is Yosef. Whereas in English, it's Joseph. And so people in the park will call me Joseph, but when I'm doing something religious, I'm called Yosef.
Okay.
Is it the same for you, or is it like if you get married in your contract, it's John?
No, you can choose whatever name you want. I mean, I never changed my name because I found it a bit disrespectful to my parents.
Yeah.
And you're not required to. The Sahaba, the companions of the Prophet, didn't change their name unless it was an evil name, like the slave of an idol or something.
Yeah.
They would change it to the slave of God. Instead of and many of the Sahaba didn't have Arabic names as well, like Salman.
Yeah.
Salman is a Persian name. He didn't change it to Suleiman.
From originally, which I imagine is Salman from Suleiman. Which is from Shlomo. And here's the interesting thing: in Hebrew it's Shlomo. I don't know how we got the Solomon from Shlomo, but in Hebrew it's Shlomo. But anyway, we're going to go to politics.
No. I mean, we were just speaking about a lot of things. All of a sudden, there's 4 cameras when the politics comes out. You could have come about 20 minutes ago.
It's going to get really angry. People will come around and shout at us. So hopefully we can keep it civil.
Okay. I mean, I don't want it to go that way. I don't either. I was really interested in actually knowing more about the revelation. That really is something I'm actually interested in.
Truthfully, I gave it everything I've given you. Probably as much as I can.
Can I give you maybe the Islamic perspective? Maybe you're not interested, or you don't. I know you're not interested, but
very briefly. I am more interested in where we're going to go with the politics, though, just because that is.
I mean, it's not my forte.
But you did have a political. You just don't want to.
Okay. One thing I would ask is, what are your opinions on Israel, Palestine? And don't assume that my opinions are what you think. By the way, don't assume.
I won't.
Because you might be shocked.
No, so far everything you've said has been quite not what I'd expect. So when it came to Israel, Palestine, I wouldn't expect it to be the same either. You told me you had a slave. Wasn't expecting that, John. So could you do me a favour? Does that say record on this one here? It says record in the bottom. Let me just check. So you asked my view on Israel, Palestine.
Yeah.
I believe if I'm speaking to you, I would maybe speak religious language. If I'm speaking to anyone else, I would use secular language. Yeah. I believe the Jews are indigenous to that land. It's the only place we've been a nation, and we never left it. We tried living under other nations and it didn't work. Christians massacred us, atheists massacred us, Muslims unfortunately massacred us in some points in history. And the only people I trust...
Jews massacred.
I'm not sure. Actually, in fact, the history of Jews massacred other Jews. I think that's a fair comment. And it's not for...
You guys got it off everyone. Okay.
It's a true statement. But what I was going to say is the only people that I trust truly have my interest at heart are my family. So we could have a good caliph. The Khalifa could be a very good Muslim ruler who treats the Jews incredibly well, and Jews rise to very prominent positions within that caliphate, within that khilafah. But then you can have the next caliph is an absolute tyrant who massacres Jews. Now for me, I feel the only people who are likely to constantly have my best interest at heart are my people. I want Jews to be responsible for protecting Jews, because when Gentiles have protected us, sometimes they've done a good job, other times they've butchered us and massacred us and left us in the street, corpse stacked on top of corpse. And so from my perspective, the only way we can ensure that Jews will survive for the next generation is if we have a state. So my argument, and where can we have a state? We can't have a state in Uganda or Argentina. The only place
that was actually
I know that's
I lived in Uganda before, by the way. I lived there for 2 years.
Is that why you got your slaves? No, I'm joking. So the only place I believe we have any claim to is Israel. Now, personally, I don't believe that should come at the expense of any Arab who's living on the land or any other person who's been living there. The land is big enough to share, either in one state, multiple states. Well, it doesn't really matter. There's enough land there for both parties to coexist. But I do believe it's absolutely essential and morally just for the Jews to have a state in that specific region.
That location.
Yeah.
So do you think they should, is the boundaries to that state, what should the boundaries be?
So I think they're up for negotiation. So as an example...
Now, is there specific boundaries you would prefer?
Okay, I'll give an honest answer. Honest answer. What I would prefer is not what I would advocate for.
No problem.
So I would say my preference would be Judea and Samaria, so the West Bank and Israel. I'm not bothered about Gaza. I'm actually not bothered about Eilat either, but we'll keep it. But the holiest sites in the Jewish world are first and foremost Jerusalem, and then after Jerusalem, certain sites within the West Bank. Most of those sites are in areas that many in the international community would say is Palestinian territory. I would dispute that. But you asked me what my preference was. My preference isn't necessarily what's the best solution for peace and for all the people in the land. And so while that land is the holiest land you could imagine for us, I think that life, blood, is more important than soil. And so I would be willing to give up land and rocks for human life. So Hebron is a great example. My forefathers are buried in Hebron. It's a very, very holy city. It's an ancient city. In 15, Jews have lived there since time immemorial. Like, it's the first land that any Jew ever bought. Right?
Do you believe Abraham's buried there?
Yeah, well, Jews believe that. Yeah, and we have done for so. And so in 1517, when the Ottomans conquered Hebron, they massacred Jews there. So we know that Jews have lived there. In 1929, the Jews were massacred again. Oh, this is ridiculous. Jews have been massacred. Sorry, Jews have lived there since time immemorial.
Everybody arguing out there, come and settle it on a bar, man. Come settle it on a bar. Let's see who can push the most reps. Come on.
Oh, that's not good.
This is ridiculous. We may move the cameras away.
Yeah.
And so...
Stop arguing, stop fighting. Come settle it a simple way. It's easy. Come on. Easy.
So
it's not...
completely. But yeah...
I heard something. I don't know the evidences or anything. I heard something about from the Nile to the Euphrates. Is that?
It's a conspiracy.
There's some Jewish groups believe that. Or?
So you may get like the odd fringe person.
It's not
a mainstream position.
And Sinai, not Sinai.
No, I mean Jews gave up Sinai. Jews conquered Sinai from Egypt and then gave it back for peace. We've got no intentions of Sinai. Shall we move our camera?
I'm going to finish soon. I'll just get an understanding really. And
there's some Dawahs there. Sorting them all.
How does it work with Muslims living within a Jewish state?
You put it on him.
We're finishing now.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
How does it with Muslim? So here's the thing, which most people don't
realize.
The
ideal for you, I mean.
So the ideal for me, any Muslim has complete equality with a Jew. A Muslim can be prime minister. A Muslim can be a top judge. And in Israel, there's 2 million Arabs who have complete equality with Jews. Well, he's louder than those guys. There's 2 million Arabs who have complete equality with Jews. Complete equality. And in fact, an Arab Jew who sent a Jewish prime minister and a Jewish president to jail. There were hundreds of mosques throughout Israel. That's what I've been many. The flip side is...
Last time they didn't let me in, but that's another thing.
The flip side is not true, however. There's not one Jew under the Palestinian Authority. There's no synagogues, they destroyed them all. Jews aren't allowed to hold office. Jews aren't even allowed to be citizens. And so for me, when I look at the two, I say, okay, Israel is more moral in how it treats the minority.
Depends what you mean moral, right? I mean, that's from a secular, Western secular perspective.
I mean, from a religious perspective.
So you would say in a religious perspective,
I would say it is
in an ideal
I would
Jewish...
say it's haram what the Muslims in Palestine do and the Palestinian territories do. It's haram because they ban Jews from being citizens. Muhammad didn't ban Jews from being
that's
citizens.
Something else, yeah.
Umar didn't ban Jews. Umar invited the Jews back to Jerusalem.
Yeah, I'm talking about from a Jewish perspective. From a Jewish perspective, would you have Gentiles in public office? I mean, not Israel. I mean, in the past, in some of the Jewish kingdoms, would you have Gentiles and pagans in public office? I mean, I don't think you would, right?
There's a concept of a ger tashav, which is a resident alien. So it's a citizen of the state that isn't Jewish. They have to subscribe to certain laws. They have their own religious code. It's actually quite similar to how Islam operates. What would happen in but this was like, the last time we had this was 2,000 years ago.
I get it, but
and today, if we had a theocracy, it would be very different. So it's hard to say. Basically, the sages of our generation would determine what rank a non-Jew. For instance, you wouldn't have a non-Jewish king because the king has to be from a certain line. But like, we're getting into like ancient concepts which wouldn't be applicable today. We wouldn't have a king. We'd have a religious court.
You might have a king one day. I mean, if it happened, how would it work? You know, I mean, I don't think Israel itself is the ideal for a Jewish state, is it?
So I think it's the best that's available for us at the moment. And what I mean by that is, in the old days, like the ancient kingdom, if you sat on the Sanhedrin, which is the court that determines that made it a theocracy, which made it a religious state, the judges had to be steeped in secular wisdom and steeped in Jewish law. They were the greatest minds, like secular and religious minds, and they are the people that define the Judaism I practice today. They define the values, or they helped shape the values that modernity is based upon. And so these great scholars who spoke multiple languages, knew mathematics, science, philosophy, Torah, halacha, everything. We don't have that today. Our rabbis today are incredibly knowledgeable on Jewish law, but ignorant where it comes to secular law. So I don't think we are ready for a religious state. There would be division.
But what would be the ideal? Like these rabbis?
The ideal.
What are they?
How it was set up before, I believe, is the ideal, but we're just not ready for that.
With the kingdom
the key thing is the Sanhedrin, the Beit Din Hagadol, which is the Supreme Court. And they would set laws for the people. It was like made of 71 plus men, and they would determine what laws the people
The last time that was Ezra, or since then as well?
Yeah, it's actually, we kind of consider it to be Rav Ashi and Ravina, who were the final rabbis who brought together the Talmud and helped codify the Talmud. Because basically how it works is, does a court have the authority to rule for all Jews in the land? And when we went into exile, it became very hard to have one court judging for all Jews. And so what I believe is that this court system was the great system. You had the finest religious and secular minds in one court, and they would pass a law, and if the people accepted the law, they followed the law, it became binding. If the people were unable to, the court then had to repeal the law, as long as it didn't contravene Torah law. So as an example, Jews are not allowed to drink wine that could have been used for idolatry. And so they decreed that we can't even use wine that's been handled by a non-Jewish person in case that non-Jew used it for idolatry. They made this, and that's binding today. I can only drink wine or grape juice that's been handled by Jews in case it's been used for idolatry. They made the same decree for olive oil, but the people weren't able to keep the olive oil, and they kept on buying Greek olive oil, so the court repealed that law. And so what you have is this court system, which is like a balance of having like a meritocracy, the greatest minds, but are only able to pass laws that the people democratically accept. So for me, that's a good system, and that is our system. It would obviously be updated because man has updated since.
So it is how you do it. Yeah, I get it. So the democracy of Israel, if you like, kind of does fit in with that.
Yeah, I think Israel's not religious though, and it's not ready to be religious. Israel's very divided between secular and religious people, and you wouldn't be able to have a panel of rabbis that the secular Jews would accept, and you wouldn't have a secular leaders that the religious Jews would accept.
So what's your plan for the territories which would be the ideal? Is it a gradual takeover?
My plan is to advocate for peace, but advocate for a strong Israel. So peace without compromising Jewish security. There are certain places over the Green Line I absolutely think Israel has a league. I was there literally last week at a place called Givat Etam, which is just outside of Efrat, which is just south of Bethlehem.
Yeah.
Israel purchased that land in 1943 from a monastery at the bottom of the valley. Israel has every right to that land, by like legally and everything. That land was purchased by Jews. It's Jewish land. It should not be part of the Palestinian state. I would potentially compromise. That in the name of peace. Like, my friend lives there. He has a farm there, and I would be supportive of giving up that farm if it brought lasting peace. But it would have to be lasting and sincere peace. I'm not willing to compromise land for fake peace and for false peace. But I'm agnostic. Any solution that brings lasting peace between Israelis and Palestinians.
Interesting.
How about you?
You know, I'm not a political commentator, but yeah, you know.
Or have you got views that you'd rather not say in camera?
No, I think it's in an Islamic system, Jews would be, obviously, as you know, should be allowed to live within an Islamic system anyway.
So my thing is, I don't want to live under Muslims, though.
I know, no, that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
But I agree with you.
Yeah, it should be. You know, like you say, it's not always been the case, but you know, Islam allows that. It's good. Just wanted to know, you know, kind of what you. It's not often you get a chance to speak to.
No, likewise, I thank you for. I think you're a good ambassador of Islam. You've dealt with me with respect. You've listened. You haven't shouted over. I think it's been a very good conversation.
Yeah, because I wanted to know what, you know. Ideally, as I said, I wanted to speak more about the beliefs and the revelation perspective. The politics, you know, I'm not too involved or interested.
Politics is the dunya. You're interested in.
Yeah, I'm interested in the Jewish concept of revelation more, and where it came from, and how you justify it, and how you know prophecy ended, for instance. That's quite important. Yeah, I wasn't allowed in Israel last time I went. They stopped me at the airport and sent me back. So the weird thing is, they asked. I wrote a book about atheism. So they said, you wrote a book about atheism. I said, yeah. They said, are you going to write a book about Judaism? I said, probably not, because Muslims are not becoming Jewish. It's not a theological challenge for us in that perspective. They didn't like it, so.
That's quite interesting. Usually when people don't get let into the country, it's because they've been involved in hostile activity in the country. But meeting you don't strike me as the type that would be...
I've never been to any protests. I don't agree with protests, full stop, on the streets. You know, I don't agree with public protests. It's not something I subscribe to.
If you do visit again, I'll give you my card, and I'm not saying I can get you into the country, but I know people. I would connect with the Israeli government regularly. I know people that work in that area, and there's maybe something I can do to help.
Yeah, I spoke to Tovia Singer as well. Rabbi, I don't know if you know him.
I know him well.
Yeah, I spoke to him. I speak to him sometimes as well, and he said the same thing. He said, look, when you get there, you know, I would like to go. And but yeah, I said I'm just interested in picking your brain, and I've not seen your videos. I don't.
Most of my videos are the worst. Like, I come to this park, it's filled with anti-Semites. Many of them are Muslim, and so my videos are conflict. I would much rather have a conversation like this, where it's respectful. We learn from each other. I'm not threatened by you, you're not threatened by me. It shows my audience that actually this park isn't just filled with lunatics. They're actually good Muslims who have a good head on their shoulders, but don't keep slaves. Even for free.
No, but yeah. I still actually would like to do that one day. Free a slave.
I mean, I'd like to free many slaves, I just wouldn't like to purchase one to do it.
Okay. It's nice speaking to you.
Jazakallahu khairan, akhi.
I don't know which one's yours.
This one's my one.
The problem of disease, the problem of affliction. Jesus Christ will make you free from every problem.
I don't know whose mic is whose. I'll tell you what, if you give them to me, I'll make sure that they all get their mics back.
From devil, free from witchcraft, free from death. Jesus Christ makes you free.
Be Jewish.
And
Be Jewish.
Be
Jewish.
Oh.
I've got my definitely Achi. Thank you. What's your name? No.
I took one time in
I know, listen, I'm just going to turn my mic off. So I would say 5 minutes.
Jesus Christ.
Which one's yours? I've got all your